Chapter 1. Frost and Found. The bell above the door chimed with the delicate ring of sleigh bells, and Evelyn Frost looked up from the glass counter just in time to see a gust of snow swirl in behind her customer. It was one of those December afternoons when the sky looked like old pewter, and the world outside felt muffled, as if the town itself were wrapped in wool. Inside Frost and Found Antiques, time moved slower, scented faintly of lemon oil, old paper, and nostalgia. Afternoon, Miss Frost, the mailman called, stamping his boots on the worn rug. Got something heavy for you. Evelyn smiled, that small, polite sort of smile that belonged more to the shopkeeper than the woman herself, and came around the counter. Her gray cardigan had a dusting of glitter near the sleeves from the morning's Christmas decorations. Something heavy? That's how you know it's interesting. He handed over a battered wooden trunk, its brass corners tarnished and the shipping tag marked the state of Margaret Halloway. Evelyn signed for it with her usual looping script, curiosity quietly blooming. Margaret Halloway had been one of her favorite clients, an eccentric artist who'd collected the strangest little things. Thimbles carved from bone, glass birds, even a music box that played only when the moon was full. Evelyn hadn't realized she'd passed away. When the mailman left, the bell chimed again, softer this time, as though it didn't want to interrupt the hush settling over the shop. Evelyn knelt beside the trunk, easing the latches open. Inside, beneath folds of yellowed newspaper, she found the usual treasures, porcelain figurines, a cracked teacup, an embroidered handkerchief. And at the very bottom, nestled in a silk scarf the color of frost, was a snow globe. She lifted it carefully. It was heavier than she expected, not the usual cheap souvenir kind, but hand-blown glass, perfectly smooth, with a carved wooden base. Inside was a tiny alpine village, houses dusted in silver-white snow, a miniature church with a steeple, and a frozen pond surrounded by evergreens. The snow itself shimmered oddly, more like flecks of light than glitter. A brass plaque at the base bore a single word, Vinter. Evelyn tilted the globe gently. The snow swirled and fell, not quite like any globe she'd seen. The flakes lingered midair longer, as if deciding where to land. For just a heartbeat, she could swear the lights in the little windows flickered. Beautiful, she whispered, setting it on the counter. Her voice echoed faintly, though she was alone. The shop creaked in the wind outside. The clock over the door ticked once, twice, and then a sound. Soft, distant, like bells. Evelyn froze, hand still on the glass. The tiny church tower in the globe seemed to tremble ever so slightly, its bell swaying, though she hadn't wound it. She blinked, leaned closer. The snow was falling again. Inside the churchyard, a lone figure stood in the snow, a speck of painted color. A villager. Only now, the figure wasn't where it had been before. Evelyn frowned, tapping the side of the globe gently. Nothing moved. The little person stared up toward her through the glass, face turned just enough that she imagined she could feel its gaze. A shiver ran through her. She rubbed her palms together briskly. You're letting the imagination win again, Evie, she murmured to herself. Still, she carried the globe to the back shelf, her special one, where she kept the pieces that weren't for sale. She placed it beside her favorite, a Paris street scene, and stepped back, studying it. The shop lights reflected on the glass, scattering gold like candle flame. Outside, the snow began to fall harder, tapping softly against the window panes. As Evelyn reached to turn off the lamp for the night, she hesitated. Something about the new globe drew her eyes again. Maybe it was the way the snow inside seemed to move on its own, or the faint impression she thought she saw near the edge of the glass. Tiny letters, as though scratched by the tip of a pin. Help us. Chapter 2. The Whisper in the Glass. Evelyn didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it, the tiny alpine church, the snow spinning in slow, deliberate circles, and those faint words carved in the frost like a whisper she wasn't meant to hear. When morning came, her kitchen felt too ordinary, kettle hissing, radio murmuring old jazz, the cat, a chubby tabby named Fig, circling her ankles with hopeful eyes. The world was normal, but the thought of that globe sat in her chest like an itch behind the ribs. By the time she reached the shop, snow was still falling, thick, heavy flakes that turned Main Street into a postcard. She unlocked the door, flipped the sign to open, and went straight to the back shelf. The globe sat exactly where she'd left it. Or almost exactly. The little church was the same, the evergreen trees still framed the pond, but there was something off. She leaned closer, nose nearly to the glass. The snow was gathered unevenly, as if wind had swept it. And one of the houses that had been intact yesterday, she was sure of it, had a roof half collapsed under the weight of snow. She blinked. No, she said aloud. No, that's not possible. Evelyn fetched her magnifying glass, the brass one she used for appraisals, and crouched down. The world inside sprang into sharp detail. Little windows glinted. The snow around the church door looked disturbed, footprints leading away from it. And at the center of the pond, etched faintly into the ice, "Help us." Her breath fogged the glass. She jerked back, heart-tripping. "Okay," she whispered, pressing a hand to her chest. "Okay, Evelyn, this is. You're tired. Or you've been reading too much at night again." But the words didn't fade. They glimmered there, catching the shop's soft yellow light, undeniable. She straightened up just as the bell above the door chimed. "Morning, Miss Frost," called a familiar voice. It was Mr. Finch, the clockmaker from next door, a gentleman of 60 with wire spectacles and a permanent smell of pine oil. He stepped in holding a mug of coffee. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," Evelyn said, a little too quickly. She smoothed her hair. "Just a strange snow globe." He chuckled, following her gaze. "Ah, your little crystal prisons. How many are you up to now?" 27. Her eyes didn't leave the alpine globe. He leaned closer to it, peering through the glass. "Lovely work. European, I'd guess? Turn of the century? There's a maker's mark," she said, showing him the small plaque. "Vinter. Do you recognize it?" Finch frowned. "Can't say I do. Sounds Scandinavian. Why, does it do something?" Evelyn hesitated. Should she tell him? That the figures moved? That they'd written "Help us" in the snow? It sounded absurd even in her own mind. "No," she said finally. "Just remarkable craftsmanship." He nodded, sipping his coffee. "You've got an eye for the uncanny, Miss Frost. I sometimes think your shop's alive. All these old things whispering stories after hours." Evelyn laughed softly, but the sound felt thin. After he left, she locked the door again, heart still fluttering. She dimmed the front lights so the back of the shop fell into a cozy twilight glow and returned to the globe. "Who are you?" she murmured. As if in answer, a small light flickered inside, a lantern in one of the windows. The tiny villager had moved again. He was standing by the frozen pond, facing her directly, arm raised. Evelyn stumbled back, nearly knocking into a stack of teacups. The snow inside swirled wildly now, even though she hadn't touched it. It moved like a storm, circling the church, faster, faster. Then, silence. The flakes settled. The villager was gone. Only the pond remained, smooth and gleaming with faint letters forming one by one in the frost. Cold. Chapter 3. The Collector's Secret. The morning passed in a blur of ticking clocks and distracted customers. Evelyn tried to focus, wrapping porcelain figurines, making change, pretending not to keep glancing at the snowglobe shelf, but her mind was still inside the glass world. By noon, she'd given up pretending. She closed the shop early. The "closed for lunch" sign went up, though lunch was the last thing she wanted. Instead, she locked the front door, drew the curtains, and carried the Vinter globe into the back room, the one she never let customers enter. That room was her sanctuary. Low light, the hum of a space heater, and shelves lined with snow globes of every size. Some were travel souvenirs from Paris, London, Rome. Others were older, glass slightly clouded, their miniature worlds more like memories than places. She set the new globe down in the center of her old oak table and sat across from it. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's have this out." The snow was still. The alpine village glimmered under its perpetual winter dusk. She watched, waiting for something, a flicker, a movement, a sign, but it remained frozen. Her eyes drifted to the rest of the collection, to the globe nearest her elbow, a carousel scene, horses mid-gallop. She hadn't shaken that one in months. She did now, idly, and felt the same strange sense she'd had last night. The flakes lingered in the air longer than they should. Another she shook. And another. One by one, she saw it. Small differences. A lamppost missing. A bridge cracked. A painted child that hadn't been there before. Evelyn sat back, heart beginning to thump in disbelief. All this time, she whispered. She'd always thought of her snow globes as safe little worlds, moments that couldn't change. Beautifully still. That's why she loved them. Why she started collecting them after. Her throat tightened. She tried not to think of that winter. The one that had taken Clara. They'd been girls, sledding after a blizzard, laughing breathless as the sky turned violet. Then the sound, the cracking ice on the river. Evelyn had reached for her sister's hand, but Clara had already slipped beneath the snow. The world had gone silent after that. Evelyn learned to love silence. To keep things that didn't move, didn't break, didn't leave. She pressed her palms against her eyes. "Not tonight," she whispered. Not again. When she looked back, the Vinter globe was glowing faintly, a pearly, silvery light pulsing within. The snow stirred though she hadn't touched it. Through the magnifying glass, she saw the village more clearly than ever. The houses were dark except one, the church. Inside, tiny figures gathered around the altar, their faces turned upward, as though they could see her. Evelyn's breath hitched. The snow at the edge of the glass began to swirl again, then settled into a single word, coming. The heater clicked off with a sharp pop. The sudden quiet felt wrong, too deep, too complete. Evelyn's reflection wavered in the globe's glass. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw two faces there. Hers and someone standing just behind her shoulder. She turned. Nothing. Only the shelves, the hum of silence, and the faint, cold shimmer of the snow globes watching her. Chapter 4. Messages in the Snow. Evelyn didn't open the shop the next morning. She told herself she was taking a much-needed day off, but truthfully, she couldn't bear to leave the globe alone. She made a cup of tea she forgot to drink and sat cross-legged in front of the oak table, notebook open, magnifying glass in hand, eyes locked on the little world under glass. The snow inside had settled overnight into smooth perfection, unbroken and clean. Nothing moved. Nothing yet. All right, she murmured, clicking her pen. Let's see what you'll show me today. She wrote the date at the top of the page, then began. Observation 1. Snow consistent with standard glycerin suspension. Observation 2. Interior illumination continues without external source. Observation 3. Am either losing my mind or this object is responsive. That last line made her snort softly. You'd love this, Clara, she said under her breath. You always liked a good ghost story. As if in answer, a faint chime rang out, high and distant, like a single note from the tiny church bell. Evelyn leaned forward, heart fluttering. The light inside the globe shifted, a subtle dawn washing over the miniature rooftops. Then came movement. Figures, no more than a dozen, trudged through the snow-blanketed streets, gathering by the frozen pond. Through her magnifying glass, Evelyn could just make out their upturned faces. They were carrying lanterns. She blinked and gasped. The frost along the inside of the glass was changing again, letters forming slowly, one icy stroke at a time, please. Her pulse skipped. I hear you, she whispered. I see you. What do you need? Of course, no answer came, just the faint swirl of snow, soft as breath. Evelyn turned up the space heater, trying to banish the goosebumps crawling up her arms. The heat washed over the table, and for a heartbeat, the snow inside the globe melted slightly, turning the pond into a shimmering mirror. Then came chaos. Tiny people ran, scattering toward the church. The snowflakes turned frantic, spinning faster and faster as if the world inside were gasping for air. Evelyn snatched the globe off the table and set it on the windowsill, away from the heat. I'm sorry, she cried, voice cracking. I'm sorry, I didn't. The storm within slowed. The snow began to settle. The pond froze over again, smooth and pale. The figures regrouped, smaller now, slower, like a town that had just survived a disaster. Evelyn pressed her hand to the glass. You're alive, she whispered, awed and terrified all at once. From behind her came a sharp crack. She spun around. On the opposite shelf, another globe, a small one with a Victorian skating scene, had split cleanly down the middle. Water pooled across the wood, glittering under the lamplight. The tiny figures inside lay toppled, faces smudged, snow bleeding into nothing. Evelyn stood frozen, watching the last flakes sink. The silence that followed felt heavy, suffocating. When she turned back to the Vinter globe, she saw that more words had appeared, hurry. Her throat went dry. Hurry for what? She breathed. Chapter 5. The World Within. The first thing Evelyn did was reach for her books. Stacks of them, antiques catalogs, folklore collections, auction listings, soon covered her counter like a paper avalanche. She'd always prided herself on her research habits. When you sell the past, you learn to listen to it. But today, the past was whispering back. She flipped through brittle pages, tracing any mention of unusual glassmakers, enchanted objects, or, she could hardly believe she was writing it down, self-animating snow globes. After 2 hours and 3 cups of lukewarm tea, her eyes burned. Nothing, just old-world craftsmanship and legends that danced on the edge of fairy tales. She almost gave up, until one slim book, half hidden beneath a stack, slid to the floor and landed open on her feet. The Artisans of Winter, Forgotten Glassmakers of the 19th Century. Evelyn bent down, curiosity prickling. Near the back, she found a small paragraph that caught her breath. Among the artisans of the northern provinces, few were as secretive as Elias Vinter, a craftsman said to bottle the season itself. His works were said to capture not only beauty but spirit, living fragments of the world at its stillest moment. He and his family vanished during a blizzard in 1874. Their workshop was never found. Her pulse quickened. Vinter. The same name engraved on the plaque at the globe's base. Evelyn sat back in her chair, staring at the globe on the table. Elias Vinter, she murmured. What did you do? The snow inside stirred, like it recognized its name. Tiny drifts shifted down the main street of the miniature village. Through her magnifying glass, she saw a group of people huddled near the church steps, lanterns glowing faintly. A shiver crawled down her arms. Did you make this or become it? As if answering, the snow around the church flared briefly, then dimmed. A sudden cold spread from the glass to her fingertips. Evelyn snatched her hand away, heart hammering. Then she saw it. The windows in several of the little houses went dark, one after another, until only a few faint lights remained. No, she whispered, pressing her face closer to the glass. Don't go out, please. But they did. The snow began to fall harder, swirling with an unnatural intensity. The globe trembled on its base, rattling softly. Evelyn steadied it, panic rising. The frost along the edge spelled a new word, shaky, uneven. Fading. She swallowed hard. What does that mean? The question hung in the quiet. Then, faintly, beneath the storm, a sound emerged. A hum, low and mournful, like a choir buried deep under snow. Evelyn backed away, clutching the edge of the table. The sound grew stronger, vibrating in her ribs, not a song exactly, but something that felt alive. Clara, she whispered before she could stop herself. The hum stopped. The snow stilled. And for one impossible second, the face of the little figure near the church looked different. Younger. Familiar. Evelyn gasped. No, that's not possible. She blinked, and the face was gone, just a painted villager again. Her notebook lay open on the table beside her, the words she'd written earlier staring back. I'm either losing my mind or this object is responsive. She picked up her pen and added a new line, Observation 7. The world inside the globe is dying. And I think it knows my name. Chapter 6. The Choice. The storm outside Evelyn's shop had quieted, but the one inside the globe raged on. She sat at her work table, the only light a flickering lamp and the dull glow from within the snow globe. Her pen hovered above her notebook, trembling slightly. She'd written, Observation 8. The inhabitants are aware, possibly intelligent, possibly desperate. Her hand hesitated before adding, Observation 9. If the world inside fades completely, will they die? She dropped the pen and rubbed her temples. This is absurd, she whispered. You can't die twice. Her voice cracked, because part of her didn't believe that anymore. Across the room, the globe pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The snow slowed, then stopped. The village lay buried in deep white silence. And then the doorbell jingled. Evelyn froze. It was nearly midnight. No wind, no footsteps, just that soft, polite chime. She turned toward the door and gasped. A shape stood just outside the frosted glass. Tall, motionless, the outline of a man, his coat dusted white as if he'd walked through a blizzard that no longer existed. Hello? She called, her voice unsteady. No reply. She moved closer, every creak of the floorboards echoing too loud. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. Then she saw it, etched in frost on the inside of the door, right beside her hand. Help us. Evelyn stumbled back, heart pounding. She whirled to face the globe. The snow had cleared. Inside, the villagers were gathered again, huddled near the church. This time, a faint golden thread connected their lanterns, weaving upward, curling against the glass like a tiny aurora. It shimmered then extended outward, through the glass. Evelyn stumbled, nearly knocking over her chair as the glowing thread stretched toward her like a reaching hand. She didn't think, she just felt. A pull, gentle but insistent, like gravity calling her closer. Her fingers hovered an inch above the surface. The cold radiating from the glass made her breath catch. And then a voice, faint, like a whisper carried through snow, said her name. Evelyn, she gasped, yanking her hand back. The golden thread vanished, snapping like silk in a storm. Her lamp flickered wildly, the light sputtering before steadying again. She stared at the snow globe, chest heaving. You're alive, she whispered. And you know me. The snow began to swirl again, faster now, until she could barely see the village inside. Frost crept down the base, etching new letters. Door. Find door. She blinked. Door? What door? No response. Just the relentless swirl of white. Evelyn turned in place, scanning her shop. Every shadow looked deeper than it should have been. Every mirror and pane of glass shimmered faintly, like portals half awake. Then she saw it, a faint outline on the far wall, behind a stack of crates. A seam she'd never noticed before, where old wallpaper peeled in a perfect arch. Her breath caught. She grabbed her flashlight, the beam trembling as she crossed the room. When she pressed her hand against the wallpaper was cold, painfully cold, like touching the inside of the globe. She peeled back a strip. Behind it, faint but undeniable, was frosted glass. A perfect circle, and at its center, carved in delicate script, E. Vinter. Evelyn stared. Oh my God. The globe on her table pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then the glass in the wall began to glow. Chapter 7. Through the glass. The glow from the hidden circle in the wall grew brighter, casting soft blue light across the shop. Every object, clocks, teacups, trinkets, shimmered as if dusted with moonlight. Evelyn's breath fogged the air. It's a door, she whispered. You meant this. The snow globe on her work table responded with a faint hum, the snow inside swirling faster. The storm and the light pulsed together, heart to heart. She approached the wall slowly, hand trembling. The glass circle vibrated faintly under her palm, cold enough to sting. Beneath the frost, shapes moved, tiny lights, flickering like lanterns in deep fog. A voice whispered again, distant but clear. Come before we fade. Her pulse thundered. How? She asked aloud. The letters formed once more on the surface, appearing from inside the frost. Touch the snow. Evelyn turned toward the work table, where the snow globe waited. Touch the snow, she muttered. Well, that's probably not the strangest thing I've done this week. She lifted the globe carefully, the glass warm in her hands now, warm, though frost still rimmed the base. The snow inside glittered as if alive. She took a deep breath and pressed her palm flat against the glass. The room exploded with light. Cold wind roared around her, but it wasn't coming from anywhere, just everywhere. Pages from her open books spiraled into the air, her lamp shattered, and the scent of pine filled the shop like a dream she hadn't dreamed in years. Evelyn opened her mouth to scream. And snow hit her face. She stumbled forward into blinding white. Her boots sank into drifts. The sound of wind was real, deafening, endless. She blinked against the flurries, heart racing. Around her stretched a familiar village, the little stone bridge, the church steeple, the cluster of houses with their warm golden windows. Except now they weren't tiny anymore. They were real. She turned in a slow circle, breath clouding the air. The air was crisp and sharp, but carried the faint smell of burning cedar. This can't be real, she whispered. Then someone spoke behind her. You finally came. Evelyn spun around. A man stood beneath a flickering lamppost. His hair was silver, his coat old-fashioned, dusted with snow. His eyes were an impossible shade of pale blue, like glass lit from within. She knew that face. She'd seen it etched in an old book. Elias Vinter, she breathed. He smiled faintly, the expression both kind and unbearably sad. I've been waiting a very long time. Evelyn's voice wavered. You made this place? I tried to preserve it, he said softly, glancing at the village. My home, my family. The snow took everything, so I caught what I could before it did. His gaze returned to her. But glass can only hold a memory so long before it cracks. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she looked around at the frozen sky, the faint flicker of the last lanterns. You're fading. He nodded. All of us are. The storm is erasing what's left. Her hands balled into fists. Then let me help. Elias studied her a long moment. Then he said quietly, there is one way. But it will cost you. The snow began to swirl harder, lifting in tiny spirals that danced between them. The lamplight dimmed. Cost me what? Evelyn whispered. Elias stepped closer. Every memory needs a keeper. If you stay, we endure. But you won't return as you were. Evelyn felt her heart pound in her ears. The air shimmered, the world trembling like thin glass under strain. She looked toward the church, the villagers now gathered at its door, tiny candles held high. Their faces glowed with hope and sorrow. She turned back to Elias. And if I don't? He looked up at the swirling sky. Then we become nothing. Forgotten. Lost to the melt. Evelyn swallowed hard, torn between the warmth of her life and the aching beauty of what she saw here. Her gaze fell on the nearest house, its window glowing softly. Inside sat a small figure of a girl, staring out with painted eyes that seemed far too real. Evelyn whispered, Clara? The girl blinked. Just once. Evelyn's breath hitched. She looked back at Elias, tears freezing on her lashes. Tell me what to do. Chapter 8. The Bargain. Snow whispered through the air like ash from an unseen fire. Evelyn followed Elias through the silent streets of the village, every footstep muffled. The houses looked peaceful, perfect, even, but up close their edges shimmered, like frost ready to vanish at sunrise. It's all beautiful, she said quietly, and it's all breaking. Elias nodded. The globe was never meant to hold eternity. It's glass, not forever. They stopped in front of the church. Its bell tower leaned ever so slightly, and the great wooden doors were carved with scenes of winter harvest, tiny people carrying lanterns beneath swirling stars. Evelyn ran her hand across the carvings. Is everyone here like you? She asked. Echoes, he said softly. The memory of what once lived. Bound to this snow, to me, to the one who remembers. Evelyn turned toward him. You mean you keep them alive? Elias's expression flickered with sorrow. I did. Until I began to fade. He reached into his coat and drew out a fragment of cracked glass, no bigger than a coin. Inside it, snow swirled endlessly, a piece of the same enchantment that made the globe. This was part of the first globe I ever made, he said. The spell of preservation. But it's splintering. He held it out. If you take it, the link passes to you. You'll become the keeper. The memory will endure. But I won't leave, she finished for him. He nodded once. You'll stay until the last story in this village ends. Until even you fade. The wind rose, tugging at her coat, her hair. Evelyn looked around at the tiny faces peeking from windows, at the soft glow of life trapped in miniature perfection. I never had a family, she said, her voice trembling. Not really. Just my shop. My books. My things. She laughed bitterly. Guess I've always been keeping memories that weren't mine. Elias's eyes softened. Maybe you were always meant to keep one more. She stared at the fragment of glass in his hand. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Her heart warred between fear and wonder. To stay meant giving up everything she knew, sunlight, seasons, the scent of the real world, but to leave meant letting these people vanish forever. She stepped closer. What happens to you if I take it? Elias smiled faintly, almost relieved. Then I can finally rest. The snow between them glowed brighter, swirling around their feet in soft spirals. Evelyn's hand hovered above the shard. For a long, fragile moment, neither moved. Then she whispered, I'll keep it. Elias exhaled, a sound like wind slipping through pine branches. The glass shard lifted, drifting into her palm. It burned cold, then warm, then settled like a heartbeat beneath her skin. The world around her shimmered, colors deepening. The snow stopped midair, frozen in a glittering halo. Every light in the village flared brighter. Elias stepped back, already fading, his outline dissolving into motes of light. Thank you, he said softly. Remember us well. Evelyn reached for him, but her hand passed through air. Elias, wait. He smiled once more. You'll do beautifully. Then he was gone. The snow resumed its fall. The village steadied, and Evelyn stood alone, breathless, holding the last shard of a man who bottled winter itself. She looked toward the church, where the villagers were gathering again, no longer blurred, no longer fading. They bowed their heads in gratitude, and the air hummed softly, peacefully. Evelyn closed her eyes, tears catching on her lashes. I'll remember, she whispered. I promise. Chapter 9. The Collector's Legacy. Winter came early that year. In a small town by the river, locals noticed the first snow fell heavier near an old shop on Elm Street, a place called Frost and Found Antiques. No one had seen the owner, Miss Evelyn Frost, for weeks. Some said she'd gone on holiday to Europe. Others swore they saw her light on at night, flickering behind the curtains, even though the closed sign never moved. Inside, the air was still. Dust motes drifted lazily through the thin morning light. The counter stood exactly as she'd left it, her notebook open mid-sentence, a half-finished cup of tea now cold and ringed with frost. And in the center of the counter sat a single snow globe. It wasn't like the others she used to sell. The base was carved from dark wood, engraved with a name, Evelyn Frost. Inside, the village shimmered beneath its eternal snowfall, the bridge, the church, the glowing lanterns. The figures moved faintly when the light hit just right, like candle shadows. If you looked close enough, though, you could see her. A woman standing at the edge of the square, a red scarf fluttering behind her, smiling up at the falling snow. And around her, the villagers glowed, brighter, warmer, as if her presence alone kept them alive. Some nights, when the wind howled through the streets, the globe would hum softly. A tune without words, comforting, familiar. Visitors sometimes swore the shop itself seemed warmer when they lingered near it, like the walls remembered something kind. And every winter since, a new snow globe appears in the window, one no one remembers putting there. Each with its own tiny village, its own flickering life. People started calling her the Snowglobe Keeper. Not a ghost, not quite a legend, just someone who made sure the snow never stopped falling where it mattered most. If you love the Snowglobe Keeper, give it a thumbs up and let the snow keep falling. Subscribe for more whimsical, mysterious tales from Whispers in the Weird, where every story glitters with a little bit of magic and a touch of frost. Stay cozy, dreamers.